Hello, everyone, and good morning. Thanks for joining us today for our Suta study with Bhante Suddhaso. So this morning, we'll be taking a look at a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, and you can find the link to the sutta in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in at any time, and we'll get to them at the end of the talk. So good morning so far to Gita, Ron, Michael, as well as Venerable Vimalanyani. Good to see you, Venerable. And good morning as well to Jens, Kyle, and Kao's our friend. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Bhante Suddhaso for this morning's sutta talk.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good morning, friends, and good morning, Venerable Vimalanyani. Happy to see a fellow monastic joining in. This morning we'll be going through the Chalangadana Sutta, which is from the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Sixes, Sutta number 37. Which is translated here as 6 aspects of giving. So as usual, I'll read through the sutta and give some explanations as we go along, and then I'll take any questions you have at the end. So the sutta begins. On one occasion, the fortunate one was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. On this occasion, the female lay devotee Velukandaki Nandamata was arranging a 6-aspect donation for the monastic community led by Sariputta and Moggallana. Using divine vision, pure and superhuman, the fortunate one saw Velukandaki Nandamata arranging the 6-aspect donation for the monastic community led by Sariputta and Moggallana, and said to the monks, "Monks, the female lay devotee, Velukandaki Nandamata, is arranging a 6-aspect donation for the monastic community led by Sariputta and Moggallana." So this is the scene for the sutta. This is setting the stage. So the scenario here is that there's a woman who's a committed Buddhist who's preparing a donation for the community of monks. And in particular for the community of monks that was led by the Buddha's 2 chief disciples. So the Buddha's 2 chief disciples, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, often when the Buddha was away from the community, then those would be the ones who were in charge. Those would be the ones who were instructing the monks and giving Dhamma talks and giving training, making sure everything was going in the right direction. So on this occasion, the Buddha was living somewhere else, but he was still keeping an eye on things. So one aspect of the Buddha which is heavily emphasized in Asia, but is mostly kind of glossed over or skipped over in Western Buddhism, is that the Buddha had a lot of psychic powers. So the emphasis tends to be placed on his wisdom, which is true. He had world-transcending wisdom. And on his samadhi, which is true. He had great samadhi. Of course, on his morality, naturally he had perfect morality and perfect compassion. But the Buddha also had mastery over the world in a more mundane sense, in that it's not world transcending. but super mundane in the sense that it's in the domain of psychic powers, spiritual abilities. So the Buddha had clairvoyance. He could see things from a distance. He could hear things from a distance. He could teleport. There's many suttas which involve the Buddha teleporting from place to place. He could walk through walls. He could become invisible. The Buddha could do all kinds of things. And this also then is a function of both his samadhi and his wisdom. So one who understands the nature of the world understands that the world is insubstantial and mind-made, which means that if one has full mastery of one's own mind, then one also has mastery over the world, the physical elements of the world. So, and then with samadhi, one is able to focus one's attention in order to enact changes in the apparent physical world. So the Buddha had a full set of psychic powers, psionic abilities, supernatural skills of various sorts. And he used these to help teach people. So this is what an enlightened being who has such powers, what they do with those powers is they use them to help teach other people the path to awakening. So in other suttas, we see the Buddha reading people's minds, so using his telepathic abilities to understand what was going on in somebody's mind so that he could see what the right teachings to give them were, so that he could understand the best way to help that person, what instructions they needed to hear, what practice methods they needed to use. On this particular occasion, he was using his clairvoyance, so his ability to see things from afar, to keep an eye on the monastic community and the affairs of the lay community that was associated with the Buddhist monastics. So while doing that, he saw that there was this one devoted lay woman, so Velukandaki Nandamata, and let's see, Velu means bamboo. What is Kandaki? Kandika, thorn or thicket. Velukandika, bamboo thicket. Her name means bamboo thicket for whatever good that's for. So I don't know why, but I find it amusing to look up the names of people. Often they have literal meanings, which are quite cute. Sometimes the names that people have, by the way, are not necessarily their birth names, but they were nicknames related to some activity that they were famous for, or something notable that they did. For example, one of the Buddha's major followers was the laywoman Ambapali, who was a very famous and highly sought after courtesan. And her name Ambapali literally means mango guardian. And that was because in addition to a courtesan, she was also the owner of a mango orchard. So I find this interesting. She was an independent businesswoman, as well as being a high-class prostitute, as well as being a devoted follower of the Buddha. And she was also a stream enterer. She attained the first stage of awakening. So I find the character of Ambapali very interesting for many reasons. But one is that she does illustrate the fact that the literal meaning of somebody's name is often a nickname related to something about them. So Ambapali owned a mango orchard. Velukandaki, maybe she had a bunch of bamboo trees. I don't know. This is just guessing. We don't know much about this character. She wasn't particularly famous in the suttas. And her last name, Nandamata, just means the mother of Nanda. Nanda was a very common name. There were many people named Nanda, so we don't know which Nanda this is referring to. The most famous Nanda was one of the Buddha's cousins. But we don't know if that's the Nanda that's being referred to here. Anyway, so Velukandiki Nandamata was preparing donations for the Sangha. And particularly, she was preparing a 6-aspect donation. So that's what the title of the sutta is about. So this sutta is treating 6-aspect donation as a technical term, but one which we're assumed to not know the meaning of. So now the Buddha is going to define what he means by the term 6-aspect donation. So the Buddha says, monks, how is a donation a 6-aspect donation? Monks, the donor has 3 aspects and the recipient has 3 aspects. What are the 3 aspects of the donor? Here, monks, the donor has a happy and wholesome mind before giving, inspires serene faith in the mind while giving, and is satisfied after giving. These are the 3 aspects of the donor. So just to talk a bit about the 3 aspects of the donor, so I find this quite beautiful. So first off, while getting ready to make a donation, so maybe you're preparing some food or you're going shopping, you're reflecting with a happy mind, a joyful mind, a wholesome mind. You're reflecting on the fact that you're doing something good. You're doing something kind and thoughtful and generous and considerate of another being or a group of beings, or in this case, a group of Buddhist monks. So delighting, being happy in the fact that you're getting ready to do something really good, something generous and kind. So by contrast, sometimes you see people who they're preparing food for the monastery and they're just grumpy and resentful and irritated. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is so stupid. I should just be meditating. Or why am I wasting my time? We don't need to bother with this. Or, oh, my parents are making me go to the monastery again. I hate going to the monastery. This is so dumb. So that's exactly the opposite. What's going on in the mind there? That's generating unwholesome mind states. And it's generating a negative association with the gift. It's generating a mind of resentment, hostility, irritation, a mind of dukkha, a mind of suffering. So when we have that kind of mind, then rather than generating exclusively wholesome formations, we're generating a lot of unwholesome formations. So that's not so great. So the Buddha says to have a happy and wholesome mind before giving. The Pali here, by the way, is sumino. So you should have a sumino before giving. Here at the monastery, we have a sumino all the time, which is great. We all like him quite a bit, and we're happy he's here. But of course, the Buddha is talking about the mind of the giver. He's not talking about having a particular monk around. So having sumino around helps us to have a happy mind. Then he says, one inspires serene faith in the mind while giving. So in Pali, that's 3 words, dadang chittang pasadeti. So dadang means giving, so while in the act of giving. Chittang means to the mind. And pasadeti, this is a very interesting word because it has 3 distinct meanings. So one is to produce inspiration. So you might say, oh, he's a really inspiring monk, or she's a really inspiring monk. That would be one use of this word. Another is the meaning of faith, in the sense of something that brings up faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, confidence in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And another meaning of this word is joy, something that brings joy. And in particular, it's a serene, tranquil, calm joy. So then actually it has 4 distinct meanings then. So inspiration, faith, serenity, and joy. So this word pasadeti has all 4 of these meanings. So the translation here, inspires serene faith, is trying to capture that whole range of meaning. And it's interesting here, it doesn't specify whose mind. It says, inspire serene faith in the mind. Whose mind? The mind of the donor, the mind of the recipient, the mind of the people watching, maybe all of the above. So while we're performing the act of giving, the act of generosity, we're trying to produce a mind of serenity, a mind of faith, a mind of joy. And also we want to act in a way which inspires the people around us, also to have serenity, faith, and joy. So an example of this is when giving, to do so in a deliberate, mindful, respectful, and polite way. So commonly in Buddhist cultures, it's encouraged whenever possible to give something with both hands. And to give something with your full attention, with your attention focused on the recipient and the act of giving to the recipient. So by comparison, if you just kind of like pick something up and just kind of fling it to them, like, here you go. Well, that's not going to inspire serene faith in anyone. Probably not even in your own mind, let alone in anybody else's. So instead, you pick something up and with full attention. So bringing to mind what you're doing. It's like, I am now giving this gift to that person. What a lovely and wonderful thing. By giving this gift, I am producing good karma. I'm training the mind for freedom from suffering. I'm training the mind for awakening. I'm helping the world to be a better place. By making my own mind better, I'm making the whole world better. By doing a kind thing for another person, I'm doing a kind thing for the entire world. And the more serene, faithful attention I put into this act of giving, the more powerful it is. So with that kind of mind, with respectfulness, politeness, courtesy, you give the gift. So this is what the Buddha is talking about. So really making an effort to make the act of giving intentional, to be as wholesome and inspiring as possible. And you can see this from the outside. If you see somebody making an offering to a monk with this kind of mind, it fills your mind with faith. It gives you inspiration to practice well. It brings you a sense of serenity, a sense of tranquility, a sense of joy. And then the third aspect of the donor, the Buddha says, one is satisfied after giving. So after giving a gift, you reflect, oh, I just did something good. I just did something wonderful. I just did something kind to another person. This is so great. I'm so happy I did that. I'm so happy that I performed this wholesome, meritorious act. I'm so happy that that person received a gift. So to be satisfied after giving. The reverse of this is to be regretful after giving. So the Buddha talks about this in some other suttas. In some other suttas, he talks about the kind of person who they give a gift, but they give it begrudgingly. And then afterwards, they regret having given a gift. They're like, oh, what was I thinking? I just gave my best tea to that ungrateful wretch. I don't even like them. And I gave them my best tea. What was I thinking? I was so dumb. I should have kept it for myself. So what kind of mind is that? Is that a wholesome mind? Is that a happy mind? Is that a good mind? Is that a pleasant mind to live with? Is that a mind which inspires you to perform greater acts of goodness in the future? Is that a mind which inclines towards freedom from suffering? Is that a mind which inclines towards freedom from self-identity? Of course not. So we don't want that kind of mind. We don't want the kind of mind that regrets giving gifts. We want the kind of mind that is satisfied, delighted by the memory of having given a gift. The kind of mind which is delighted at the recollection of one's own goodness, the recollection of one's own generosity. So these are the three aspects of the donor. So one has a happy and wholesome mind before giving. So while getting ready to give the gift, have a happy mind focused on the goodness that you're getting ready to do. One inspires serene faith in the mind while giving. So making sure that while you're giving, you're doing so in a deliberate, attentive, respectful, and polite way. And one is satisfied after giving. So after giving the gift, you joyfully reflect on your own goodness, on the wonderful goodness that's been done. And these are the three aspects of the donor. Then the Buddha says, what are the three aspects of the recipient? So he says, here, monks, the recipient is either free of lust or is practicing for the removal of lust, is either free of aversion or practicing for the removal of aversion, and is either free of delusion or practicing for the removal of delusion. These are the three aspects of the recipient. So there's two sides to this. One is that if you're a donor, then optimally you want to try to give to somebody who is trying to be a good person. You want to support spiritual practitioners. You want to support people who are sincerely trying to be good people and who are sincerely trying to make the world a better place through the purification of their own mind and through helping others as best they can. And also, when one is on the receiving end of a gift, one should reflect, if I am practicing for the purification of my own mind, then that means that this act of giving will be of more merit for the giver. This act of giving will be more beneficial for the giver. So for the giver's sake, as well as our own, then I should make a stronger effort in my practice. I should really try. I should really try to not give in to lust. I should really try to not to give in to aversion. I should really try to keep my mind clear and alert. I'm really going to make an effort to purify this mind so that when others give gifts to me, it brings the maximum benefit to them. They get the most good karma from giving that gift to me. And there's other suttas where the Buddha gives exactly that reflection. Where, for example, in the Saleka Sutta, the Buddha says at one point, if one wishes, may those who give to me receive great benefit from that act of giving. Then one should practice jhana, cultivate vipassana, etc. Practice morality. So sila, samadhi, and panya. One should make this strong effort to develop one's practice for the benefit of one's givers, for the benefit of one's donors and supporters, as well as for one's own benefit, of course. So this is not to say that one shouldn't give to other people. So in the Dakanirvibhanga Sutta, the Buddha says that even a gift given to an animal is of great benefit. Even a gift given to an animal repays times 10. And then he goes up from there, a gift given to an ordinary, immoral, unvirtuous, unspiritual person. He says a gift given to them repays 100 times. And it goes up from there until you're giving to enlightened beings, and then it becomes immeasurable, incalculable. So it's still worth giving to people who are maybe not such wonderful people, not such wholesome people. And one of the reasons for this, well, first off, because they're still people who are suffering like everybody else and who need some help and who enjoy receiving gifts, and who doesn't like being given a gift. It's always a lovely thing. But also because giving a gift to another person can help inspire them to be better people. When somebody receives a gift, then they can reflect, oh, it feels good to be given to. Maybe I should give something to somebody else as well. They can reflect, oh, it feels nice to be the recipient of kindness. maybe I can show kindness to others as well. So of course, it's best to give to people who are practicing for the overcoming of greed, hatred, and delusion. But it's still good merit to give to other people as well. It's still good karma to help anyone that you encounter. So before the pandemic, when I used to go around New York City quite often, actually I used to go around New York City several times a week to give Dhamma talks in different places. I would always carry some snacks in my bag, not for myself because, well, one, I don't snack. Also because I was usually going around in the afternoon and I don't normally eat afternoon anyway. But I'd carry around snacks in my bag in order to give to beggars. If there's one thing that you'll see everywhere in New York City, it's beggars on the streets, everywhere. And it's a lovely thing to be able to give them something. And I don't carry money, so that's not an option for me. But I can carry around some fruit or some snack bars or some nuts or whatever and have something to give them. And you can really see it. You can really see the delight when somebody treats them like a human being, shares some kind words and gives them a little gift. So this is a practice which I've been encouraging for many years now, which is whenever you're in the city, bring some snacks to give to the beggars. So those are the three aspects of the donor and the three aspects of the recipient. And the Buddha says, in this way, monks, a donation is a six-aspect donation. And he says, monks, it is not easy to measure the amount of merit produced by a six-aspect donation by saying, the meritorious result is like this, the wholesome result is like this, it brings pleasure like this, it is heavenly like this, results in this happiness, leads to this heaven, leads to getting this, which is desirable, appealing, pleasing, beneficial, and pleasant. It is just considered to be an incalculable and immeasurably vast heap of merit. So the Buddha's point here is that the act of generosity given under these six conditions, so happy mind before giving, inspiring, serene, faithful mind while giving, satisfied after giving, and giving to someone who is practicing for the overcoming of greed, hatred, and delusion. So he says, under those conditions, it produces so much good karma that it's difficult to measure. And it's difficult to quantify. It's difficult to say, well, it's going to lead to this kind of rebirth. It's going to get this kind of pleasant result. Like, you can't be that specific. All you can really say is that it's an incredible amount of good karma, which inevitably will bring very supportive and pleasant conditions in samsara. And it can be supportive conditions which help us to attain awakening. So the Buddha's point here also is not to get caught up in this accountant mindset of like, well, I gave 1 banana. That means in my next life, I'm going to receive 10 bananas. Okay, score. 10 bananas on the scorecard. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to give an apple. So in my next life, I'll have 10 apples. Okay, 10 apples on the scorecard. He's like, no, you don't be an accountant. Just give, because giving is good. Giving is really good. And make an effort to give with a wholesome mind. Make an effort to give to those who are trying to have wholesome minds. Don't worry about keeping scorecards. Don't worry about how many karma points you've got. You're getting lots. You don't need to keep track. Just keep building up as much good karma as you can. It's not hard. Just be nice. It's not hard. Just be generous. Be respectful. Be friendly. It's not difficult to accumulate tremendous amounts of good karma. Unfortunately, it's also not difficult to accumulate tremendous amounts of bad karma. So we really need to watch out for that mind of stinginess, that mind of selfishness, that mind of resentment, that mind of irritability, that mind of greediness, that mind of spaciness. That's what we need to watch out for. Because every moment we're shaping our karma. Every moment we're making choices. So we want to always make the best choices that we can. And again, you don't need to worry about keeping score. Just do good things. And you'll get good results. So then the Buddha gives a simile. He says, monks, just as it is not easy to measure the amount of water in the ocean by saying it has this many liters of water, or this many hundreds of liters of water, or this many thousands of liters of water, or this many hundreds of thousands of liters of water, it is just considered to be an incalculable and immeasurably vast amount of water. In the same way, monks, it is not easy to measure the amount of merit produced by a sixth aspect donation. As before, it is just considered to be an incalculable and immeasurably vast heap of merit. So, of course, they actually do have an estimate these days as to how much water there is in the ocean. So let's see what the internet pulls up for this. How much water is in the ocean? A lot, as it turns out. So it's one of those numbers which is so mind-bogglingly big that I don't even know how to read it out loud. But suffice to say, a lot. Let's see, 332 million cubic miles of water. They also give it in gallons, but the number in gallons is so ridiculously gigantic that, again, I don't even know how to say that. So, a lot. So the Buddha's point here, once again, is that just as there's a ridiculous amount of water in the ocean, in the same way, performing a donation, which is pure in these six ways. So the 3 ways of the donor and the 3 ways of the recipient, produces a ridiculous amount of good karma. So more than you need to worry about. More than you need to worry about trying to measure and calculate. This also calls to mind the sutta that Bhante Sumino read yesterday, the one on the stream of blood in the 4 great oceans. So that also uses the imagery of the ocean as being something immeasurably vast and deep and broad. But the message there, of course, is a little bit different. There it's emphasizing the amount of time that we've wasted in samsara, the amount of time that we've spent suffering in samsara. Whereas here the Buddha is emphasizing the opportunity that we have in samsara, the opportunity to perform acts of goodness, the opportunity to cultivate the kind of bright, happy, wholesome mind that leads towards awakening. Oh, by the way, now that we have these numbers on how much water there is in the ocean, we could calculate the amount of blood you spill when you get beheaded, and then calculate how many deaths it would take to fill up the oceans. Which is, of course, totally missing the point of the sutta. But it's one of those fun little factoids which might be enjoyable to figure out. Yeah. So then the Buddha ends the sutta with some poetry. So as I've mentioned in the past, the Buddha was a poet, and he often gives these cute little inspiring poems at the end of his teachings. And like any poem, it always sounds terrible in translation. You just cannot capture poetry in translation. It's nearly impossible. But you can capture the meaning. So I'll go ahead and read out the poem, just keeping in mind that it sounds a lot better in Pali. It says, before giving, one has a good mind. While giving, one inspires serene faith. After giving, one is satisfied. This is the perfect sacrifice. One who is free of lust, free of aversion, free of delusion, with no corruptions. This is the perfect field for a sacrifice, a restrained spiritual practitioner. So these first two, it called? The set of four?
Oh,
Cantos?
quatrain.
Quatrain. There we go. What was that? Stanzas. Okay, stanza. So these first two stanzas, they're just reiterating the three qualities of the donor and the three qualities of the recipient. You'll note here that the Buddha is using the word sacrifice. As Ayasama mentioned in a sutta study a week or two ago, because sacrifices were a common aspect of religion in India at that time, and actually to this day around the world, religious sacrifices are a feature of many religions. The Buddha used that same word sacrifice, but he changed the meaning. So rather than sacrifice meaning to kill an animal on an altar or doing something else harmful and wasteful along those lines, instead the sacrifice that the Buddha recommended was to give some of what you have to somebody else. So it's a sacrifice in the sense that we are letting go of some of our own wealth. We are letting go of some of our own possessions. So in that sense, you can call it a sacrifice. But it's a sacrifice which only brings goodness to everyone involved. By contrast, if you drag a sheep to an altar and cut its throat, nobody benefits from that. That's the example of a sacrifice which is just harmful to everybody involved. And it doesn't bring benefit to anybody at all. It's bad for the sacrificer and it's bad for the animal. Nobody wins. Whereas the kind of sacrifice he's recommending, everybody wins. The donor wins, the recipient wins, everyone wins. So much win. Then the Buddha, the next two stanzas I'll read as well. He says, having bathed oneself before and giving with one's own hands for both oneself and the other, the sacrifice is of great fruit. So here he mentions bathing oneself before giving, which I find cute. You get the sense in reading through the suttas that there are basically two major camps in religious thought around bathing at the time in India. There were the ritual bathers, who were the people who would bathe 3 times a day, no matter what. So morning, afternoon, and evening, every day, they would bathe 3 times. And that was from the belief that washing your physical body would purify the karma in your mind. And the Buddha, of course, said this was ridiculous. Washing your body doesn't do anything for your karma. You can be the most evil person in the world if you can shower all day long, and that doesn't change the fact that you're an evil person filled with bad karma. And then the other school was the people who bathed extremely rarely or never. So these were the renunciants, the spiritual practitioners who practiced coarseness, dirtiness, living as uncomfortable a life as possible. So they avoided bathing because bathing is comfortable. They avoided bathing because it makes you smell nice and be presentable. So the Buddha was somewhere in between. He was like, yeah, go ahead, bathe once in a while. It's fine. There's no problem here. But don't get delusional in thinking that bathing is somehow inherently spiritually good, because it's not. It's just taking care of the body. And also it's an aspect of social politeness. So it's an aspect of social politeness to bathe yourself before getting close to other people so that we don't offend them with any unpleasantness coming from our body. So in the act of giving somebody a gift, if somebody gets close to you and they smell like they haven't bathed in a couple of weeks, you're kind of like, thank you. Whereas if somebody comes and they've recently bathed and their body smells pure and fresh, then you're not disturbed by anything that they're bringing into your presence. So in the same way, if you're going to give somebody a gift, then first cleaning your own body as an act of politeness to the person that you're about to move close to. So knowing that you're going to get close to the monks, then take a shower first. Sometime in the last couple of days is good. Again, as an act of politeness to the recipient. And he says, giving with one's own hands. This is another important aspect which the Buddha mentions in many suttas. So whenever possible, you give with your own hands. So of course it's fine if you can't come in person. Like these days with the pandemic, it's not so easy to come to the monastery in person. So people send things through the mail, which is beautiful and much appreciated. But when possible, it's always best to go and bring it and offer it with your own hands. So once the pandemic is over, we'll start offering that as an opportunity again, an opportunity to come personally to the monastery. And again, the Buddha emphasizes that this is what generates the most good karma, is when you perform the offering personally with your own hands. Not getting somebody else to do it for you, not just putting something in the mail. Again, those are still good things to do. But the best thing is to go in person and give it with your own hands. Then finally, the Buddha says, the wise who have sacrificed in this way, again, who have given 6 aspect donations rather than like slaughtering lambs on an altar and other silly things that people used to do. The wise who have sacrificed in this way, faithful with a mind released, in a benign and happy world will be reborn. So here he's pointing to the fact that performing pure-hearted acts of generosity leads to being reborn in extremely pleasant heavenly conditions, which, if you're not aiming for enlightenment, that's good news. Broadly speaking, you can divide religious goals into 2 categories. Those who are aiming at full enlightenment, which is basically just the Buddhists, and only some Buddhists for that matter. And people who are just aiming for a pleasant heavenly rebirth, which is pretty much everybody else. So Christians, they're aiming at heavenly rebirth. And we're like, okay, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, who doesn't want to live in heaven? Sounds great. Bad news, it's temporary. And then you die and you get reborn somewhere less pleasant. And wind up back here again, maybe, or somewhere less nice than here even. But even if you are aiming at enlightenment, it's better to be born in a happy and pleasant world where you're not struggling just to survive. To be born under conditions where you have the free time and the luxury and enough health, physical and mental health, to be able to practice well. So it's not easy. It's not easy to live a spiritual life when you're struggling just to get by. It's not easy to live a spiritual life when your body is severely damaged. It's not easy to live a spiritual life when your mind doesn't work properly. So cultivating ordinary good karma through acts of generosity also helps to create the supportive conditions for enlightenment. And happiness. Happiness is a supportive condition for samadhi, which is itself a supportive condition for awakening, for wisdom. So having a happy life then is one of the supporting conditions for progress on the path to awakening. So that's the end of this sutta. At this time, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and type them in and I'll answer as best I can. Thank you.
So thank you, Bhante, for sharing that sutta with us. And there are a couple questions and comments already so far. Also, welcome to Galaxy from Malaysia, Denise, Elaine, and some friends on Instagram Live also joining in. So Michael says, how wonderful it is to give when completely free of fetters, free of greed, free of delusion.
May we all have that experience someday.
And Michael also says, I like the idea of bathing as working to get into the right mind before giving, but perhaps that's playing fast and loose with the sutta.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, I'm completely on board with that. So I think the Buddha actually did mean something by that. So I take it as referring to, preparing yourself for the act of generosity. It's like putting some deliberate effort into it, similar to cultivating a happy and wholesome mind before giving. So while getting ready to make your donation, you're reflecting on the fact that you're about to do something really good. So you want to put some extra effort into making it a special thing. Put some extra effort into making it a pleasant experience for everybody involved. So for me, bathing naturally fits into that. And you'll see that when people come to the monastery, they normally don't show up all disheveled and grungy. Normally, they make an effort. They make an effort to dress up the corpse a little bit, to wash the body and put nice clothes on and do whatever it is people do to this hunk of meat that they're dragging around. Which is all really sweet because it indicates a mind of respectfulness and appreciation for Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So every now and then I hear people say things like, oh, why is that person wearing makeup when they go to the monastery? Why is that person wearing fancy clothes when they go to the monastery? And I'm like, well, out of respect for Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. They're doing it because it puts them in that state of mind of respectfulness and appreciation, of wanting to bring their best, to put forward their best when they come to the monastery. So it's not necessarily an aspect of vanity, but rather it's an aspect of preparing the mind to have that attitude of respectfulness, that attitude of politeness and appreciation.
And Yen says, Bhante, it's difficult for me to reflect on my own wholesomeness from giving because I often feel like I'm being arrogant or that it's reinforcing an idea of self. Do you have any suggestions on how I can use the reflection of giving in my practice?
This was Jens.
Mm-hmm.
So Jens, reflect on your own goodness. You have a lot of it. This is not arrogance. So it's cultivating a wholesome self-regard, which does eventually lead to the abandoning of all self-identity. But don't try to jump directly to that. So one way of looking at Buddhist practice is that in the beginning, we're replacing a negative self-identity with a positive self-identity. Then we work on replacing positive self-identity with no self-identity. But if you try to just skip directly to no self-identity, then usually what happens is you wind up having a lot of unresolved negative self-perceptions floating around in your subconscious. And you might think you're practicing freedom from self-identity, but actually you're just suppressing your bad habits. You're just suppressing your unresolved subconscious garbage. So you first need to make an effort to cultivate a self-identity connected with the wholesome. I am a good person. I am a generous person. I am a spiritual practitioner. I am trying to attain awakening. So you build that up because that gives you the momentum that you need to overcome all of the negative, unwholesome self-identities. That gives you the power that you need to cleanse your mind so that it's possible to let go of all self-identity. So don't worry about cultivating arrogance. In fact, if you're going to be arrogant about something good. It's like, look at me, I'm such a wonderful person. Oh, rock on, dude. Yeah, keep it up. It's a lot better than being arrogant, like, look at me, I robbed 3,000 people today. Aren't I awesome? It's like, no, you're just a politician. No, don't delight in negative self-identities. Delight in positive self-identities. The more you delight in positive self-identity, the closer you'll get to letting go of all self-identity and transcending all suffering.
And Venerable Vimalanyani referring to Nanda Mata,
Mm.
says that Nanda is mentioned in Anguttara 753, actually, with Nanda Mata saying, I had an only son called Nanda who I loved dearly. The rulers
Mm.
forcibly abducted him on some pretext and had him executed. But I
Mm.
can't recall ever getting upset. This is Nanda Mata talking. Because I believe, was she a non-returner, once returner? I can't remember. I might be mixing up the lay women supporters.
I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
have to follow it up. I think there were also 2 or 3 different Nandamatas. So there's Velukandaki Nandamata, but there were a couple
Mm.
other ones. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Mm.
I'm not sure. Thank you.
Mm. And Venerable also says, thank you for your teaching. Elaine, Michael, and Jens also say thank you. And on Instagram, we have a question that says, can you explain the concept of winning when discussing giving?
Mm.
Because it seems like a competitive concept, which seems counterintuitive to the practice of Buddhism.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to be viewed as a competitive thing, but rather in the sense that, as I said, everybody wins. When you do something generous and good, then it brings wholesomeness to everybody who's involved. So if you start thinking, well, I'm better than everybody else, well, then that is actually starting to add in arrogance and self-obsession. So don't focus on you as being better than others, but rather focus on the goodness of the act that was done. Oh, it's so wonderful that this act of generosity was done. It's so delightful that we can help each other in this way. But yeah, I mean, I use the word winning in a somewhat flippant or colloquial sense. Rather, it's that there's so much goodness that comes from generosity. There's so much benefit that comes from giving. And the benefit comes both to the giver and to the recipient and to everybody who's aware of the gift. So, in a number of suttas, the Buddha also points out that if you observe somebody else giving a gift and you appreciate that, so in your mind you appreciate the fact that somebody's giving a gift, then that means you also are receiving good karma. You also are generating merit, generating good karma. So you don't even need to be personally involved in an act of giving. If you just observe an act of giving and appreciate it, then that also generates good karma. So this is why I said everybody wins. Because all you have to do is just constantly produce a wholesome mind, and benefits come to you. And everybody involved, again, there's no this person's better than that person. It's just everybody involved is accumulating a tremendous amount of merit, tremendous amount of good karma. There's no competition. Basically, there's winners, which are called Buddhas, and there's losers, which is everybody else. So we're all trying to become Buddhas. So you can think about it in that way if you want, but it's really kind of beside the point once again. The point is, are we moving towards awakening? That's it. That's the only point. And performing pure, wholesome, good-hearted donations, acts of generosity, is one way that we point the mind towards awakening. And it's a way that the Buddha placed tremendous emphasis on. Okay?
And on Instagram, Kanish KT 23 also says, you don't need to measure your karma. It's always best to do good things without even knowing that you're doing it.
It's good to do good things, yeah, but it's actually best to do good things with full awareness. What's not so necessary is it's not so necessary to spread the news around to everybody else. One of my favorite quotes from the Mahayana tradition is, a bodhisattva does good deeds in the dark of night. So the point of that is that we're not doing good deeds in order to get fame and recognition and reputation. We're giving good deeds just because it's good. That's it. Okay.
And Kanish had also said, Buddhism doesn't depend on faith. It depends on thorough investigation and knowing what emptiness means. Any comments or...
I don't 100% agree with that. Faith is also an extremely important component of Buddhism. But faith can arise from reasoned investigation, which for most people who become converts to Buddhism, that's normally how we approach it. We normally come through the reasoned investigation doorway. But eventually that turns into faith. And faith then is the foundation for rapid progress along the path. But you don't have to start from faith. And the faith that you wind up having is not blind faith. It's not superstitious faith. But rather it's the deep confidence in something which is undeniable. The deep confidence in something which is incontrovertible. Okay.
And Venerable Vimlanyani says that in Anguttara 753, it's kind of like a companion sutta, where we actually do find the same Nandamata.
Oh, okay.
And the act of giving is explained a bit more by the Buddha with his divine eye.
Which one?
753, Nandamata Sutta. Velukantaki Nandamata.
Okay. Anything else?
Then Denise says, at last year Katina ceremony, someone passed around a gift so that others could touch it before she offered it. It was heartwarming for me to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's coming from this same idea of giving with one's own hands. So you do often see this, especially at Katina ceremonies, but sometimes on other occasions, where there'll be one offering, but it will be passed around so that everybody can put their hands on it, so that everybody gets the experience of offering it with their own hands. So that's a really beautiful thing. It's a simple gesture, but it's one that has a tangible effect on the mind.
And on YouTube, Alexandra says, how should we respond to gifts given to us with conditions or with resentment? Should we not accept at all?
Well, that's a complicated situation. So if it's just resentment, then I'm leaning towards saying that most of the time it's probably the right thing to receive the gift anyway. Because by allowing someone to give you a gift, you are helping them to generate a wholesome mind. You're helping them to generate good karma. You're helping them to build up the habit, the skill of giving. So to receive a gift is an act of kindness to the giver. So even if the giver's mind is a little bit tainted, it's usually still worth receiving their gift. Because by receiving their gift, you are helping them become a better person. As for a gift given with a condition, well, that's not a gift. That's called bartering. That's called a commercial transaction. That's not a gift. So if somebody wants to barter with you, if they want to perform a commercial transaction with you, that's completely different. And in that case, well, do what you feel is best. Sometimes the best thing to do is to tell the person, no, I'm not interested in bartering. I am willing to give you a gift with no strings attached, but I'm not interested in bartering with you. Thank you. And on other circumstances, you might just say, okay, let's barter. Just like when you walk into a store and you're like, well, I'll take that bag. And the person says, okay, it costs X amount of money. Well, you don't start complaining. You're just like, okay, that's what it costs. Let's perform the trade. But that has nothing to do with generosity. That's just a commercial transaction. Yeah, so if a gift comes with conditions and strings attached, then it's not a gift. It's a transaction. Okay.
And that seems to be the final question on both platforms. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. You can come back again this evening at 7:30 p.m. New York City time for some meditation and words of Dhamma. And you can join us tomorrow for this week's last Sutta study. And in the evening, we'll have monk chat where you can ask even more questions about anything we've spoken about this week or anything related to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And we can end today with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Enjoy the rest of your day.